Greetings YouTube, I've got another deck profile for you guys, and this time it's for the regular format, and this time it's Lair of Darkness. So, Lair of Darkness is probably my favorite deck right now. I'm not really playing the meta decks at all. I'm just kind of like a hipster Yu-Gi-Oh person, I guess you could say. But anyways, Lair of Darkness is really fun. It's actually a really strong control deck. Going first, it's like really strong, kind of competes with the meta decks. The problem is that going second is kind of really bad, but that's okay. You win the coin flip, hey, you got a decent shot, and it's a lot of fun. I kind of really like control decks more than combo decks or any other style of deck, just because I like kind of having to pay attention to the opponent's turn, and I think it's kind of fun to like decide when you're going to use a trap or when you're going to use a hand trap, and that's kind of what this deck is about. Kind of interrupting your opponent's turn, and there's a lot of search in this deck. You get to search any trap you want. You get to deny your opponent's extra deck with the artifact combo, which, by the way, I'm surprised more people aren't playing in Master Duel. I know it's really kind of cancerous in the TCG, but it's in Master Duel. It stops your opponent from using the extra deck. It's kind of really insane. So yeah, I'll go ahead and explain. One of the things about this deck that's really cool is that you kind of search out a Sangan with Tour Guide, and you're also running Ties of the Brethren, which we'll get to later, to search out Sangan. But you have Sangan, and then your other card, which is the best card in the deck, is Lilith, Lady of Lament, which maybe you've seen because of the DD Dynamite bullshit. But in this deck, it's actually not cancerous, I promise. I love this card. She's really good. You tribute a dark monster, you reveal 3 normal traps in your deck, and then your opponent randomly chooses 1 to add. So it basically lets you search traps. What I like to do is, as you can see, I'm running 2 of every trap that I've opted for, and then 1 trap trick. You can kind of cheese her effect by just choosing both copies of your trap and then the trap trick, and if you get unlucky, then you get the trap trick, and then you could just trap trick for the trap you want, which isn't as good as getting the trap, but it's fine. Sangan gets searched out, and then the reason why I brought up Lilith is because your main way of getting Sangan off the field is to tribute him with Lilith's effect, and then when Sangan sends to the graveyard, you search a monster with 1500 or less attack, which is any of your hand traps. So you have a little bit more room because you can search Max C on turn 1. And you can search Ash Blossom on turn 1. So you do have to choose which one you want. Ash Blossom is probably safer than Max C. Max C is obviously really good, so you run 1 copy of each. You can also opt for different hand traps if you want. I just leave room for the 2 because I like to use more traps, but you can also opt for more hand traps if you want because they're searchable. Tour Guide of the Underworld, you search any of your level 3 Fiend monsters, which is basically all of your good monsters. You negate their effects, but the cool thing about Lilith, since her tribute effect is a cost, having her effect negated doesn't eliminate that effect. So you pay the cost, the effect to search a trap is negated. But the effect that you care about is the tributing, and the reason why you care about tributing is because of the field spell Lair of Darkness. So Lair of Darkness makes all of your monsters dark, all face-up monsters on the field dark type, or attribute, sorry, Pokemon. All of your monsters dark attribute, and the best effect is that when you activate a tribute effect once per turn, you can tribute your opponent's monster, which is really, really good. Obviously, if you've used Kaijus, you know how good tributing an opponent's monster is. With this deck, you can tribute an opponent's monster once per turn during either player's turn, because Lilith's effect is quick. So you can just tribute a monster during their turn to interrupt. And there's not a lot your opponent can do about it because there's not a lot of cards that are immune to being tributed. Herald of Ultimateness, you can just tribute. If they try to Ultimateness while you have your board out, you just tribute it. It's really, really strong. Malice is kind of the same, except she's way worse because she has to tribute 2 monsters, but she gets a trap from your graveyard, so I run 1 of her just in case that you have a long game, which sometimes you do with this deck. Your goal is to make the game long and run your opponent out of resources. So having a way to renew your traps is still good, so I run her at 1. Some people say she's bad. I think she's kind of bad, but still worth running. You run Skarm in the deck because you can use Ties of the Brethren, which basically this is your main play. You get Lair on the field, and then you get Tour Guide, or you normal summon Lilith, and then you Ties of the Brethren. And with this, you can get your Skarm, you can get your Sangan, and Skarm, if you played Burning Abyss, you know that when Skarm's in the graveyard during the end phase, he adds a level 3 Fiend-type monster, so you can search any of your other Fiends. And it's really easy to get Skarm in the graveyard because if there's a monster on the field that's not a BA monster, he pops himself. Or if you use Tour Guide to search Skarm, which is a play that you can make, it negates his effect that destroys himself, but you can just link away into an extra deck monster, and then his effect still activates. Arima is sort of your extra copies of the field spell, because he has an effect where you discard him and then add Lair of Darkness from your deck to your hand. It's not as good as having Lair of Darkness because it can get Ash Blossomed, but I think having the 6 copies is still really good. You want to get Lair on the field very badly because this deck very quickly is unable to make plays if you don't have Lair on the field. It's the whole point of the deck. If you're really not drawing Lair for some reason with this profile, you can add Terraforming as well. I find that the 6 is usually consistent enough, but Terraforming is an option. You need to have Lair. And Metaverse is a card too. The reason why I don't run Metaverse is because you can't run 2, so it can't be trap tricked, but if you have Metaverse, go ahead and run it. I don't know why it's an ultra rare. I guess it's a really strong card, but because it's limited, it really limits its playability, which I guess that's the point. But anyways, Prosperity I think is the best pot to run in the deck because you get to dig for your Lair. And like I just said, Lair is very, very important, so going 6 cards into your deck is really, really good. It means that, you know, you're probably going to get Lair. You're running 6 copies of it in your deck. So if you go 6 in, you're very likely to get your Lair off of this card. You can run Extravagance as well, but I just think that having Lair in your hand is so critical that Prosperity is worth running. Super Poly, the cool thing about this card is that it's basically our only going second card, which if you're going second a lot, you can run 2 copies of this as well to kind of alleviate how bad the deck is going second. But you can Super Poly, and Lair of Darkness makes all monsters on the field dark, which is a really easy Starving Venom Fusion Dragon. So you don't even necessarily have to rely on Mud Dragon of the Swamp, which is obviously a much worse card. I still have it in the extra deck, just in case I need to Super Poly without Lair of Darkness on the field or something. But most of the time you're going into Starving Venom, which is a good card. Now let's talk about the Artifact package. If you don't know what this is, basically, it's this trap, Artifact Sanctum. You might even want to consider running 3, it's that good. It special summons an artifact monster from your deck, and then it has an additional effect where, if it's destroyed by an opponent's card, you can target 1 card on the field and destroy it. So, it's already good because it semi-protects your back row. If, like, say your opponent Lightning Storms or Feather Dusters, you get to at least pop a card, which isn't bad. But then we get to the artifact monsters, and the good one is Scythe, because when it's special summoned during your opponent's turn, it locks your opponent from using the extra deck, which is just toxic. It's so good. It's such a high level of control. It's just busted. You have to run this. You have to run this. And Scythe can set itself as a spell and trap in your spell and trap card zone, and you can like pop it yourself during your opponent's turn, say with like Heavy Storm Duster, and it still works. Special summons itself after it's popped. You can use your own effect to pop it, and it locks your opponent out of the extra deck. So if you draw Scythe, you just use Lilith to search Heavy Storm Duster instead, and you can still get its effect off. So technically it's a Garnet, but you can work around it and still play it. So it's not even a Garnet. Fucking crazy. Morale Attack is just in case you have to Sanctum twice. It's not as good, but Morale Attack lets you pop a card on the field if it's special summoned, which it's good to have both effects live. It's insane. You want to get this card off every duel if you're going first. As far as the other traps go, back to the front. This is the deck's source of renewal. As your monsters get sent to the graveyard, it's searchable by Lilith, so that's why you run this and not like Call of the Haunted, because Call of the Haunted is a continuous trap, and Lilith can only search normal trap cards. So you run this, special summons in defense position. You can also use this to special summon Scythe during your opponent's turn. Infinite Impermanence is a normal trap, so we have searchable Imperm. Very good. It's a hand trap. Dogmatic of Punishment. You probably know how good this trap is. You're running Intis in the extra deck to pop an extra card. You're running Pegasus so you can spin a card. It's searchable. And then Icy Dragon's Prison is mainly for Eldritch because it banishes 2 cards. So you want to use this, like, say, if the Golden Lord is in the graveyard and they have another Golden Lord on the field, you special summon the Golden Lord from the graveyard to your field, and then you banish both Golden Lords, and all of a sudden your Eldritch player is -2 of his 3 Golden Lords. That's very good. And then if you're playing against another deck generically, well, you just get to special summon one of their monsters to your field. The last card that I have to talk about that I kind of skipped over is Diabolos, the boss monster of the deck, you could say, but you don't actually summon him that much, and I think he's only worth running at 1 copy. He is a strong boss monster. He's unable to be tributed, and he cannot be targeted. And basically how you summon this card is you tribute one of your monsters, one of your dark monsters during your turn, or during your opponent's turn, I think. You summon Diabolos from the graveyard or the hand. The main way you get this in your hand, and why you can get away with running one copy, is because if you normal summon Arima, you contribute another monster, another dark monster you control, and then it adds Diabolos to the hand. And what's cool about this is that Diabolos can be special summoned from the hand with his effect, even though he wasn't in the hand while you tributed. So you get a combo where you can tribute one of your monsters with Arima, it adds Diabolos to the hand, and then Diabolos special summons itself to the field. Which is good if you can normal summon Arima, or you've created enough control in the duel to be able to do that, but you're not doing that very often because if you remember, Arima's main purpose is to search Lair. So you kind of have to have Lair and Arima at the same time to get this effect off, which does happen. So it's good to have Diabolos there just to rely on that. The extra deck is pretty self-explanatory. You have Intis because you're running Punishment. You have Mud Dragon and Starving Venom because you're running Super Polymerization, sorry. You can also Super Poly First of the Dragons because one thing I forgot to mention is that Lair of Darkness summons dark tokens to your field and to your opponent's field whenever a monster is tributed during the corresponding player's turn. Let's say your opponent has 2 tokens on their field because you tributed during their turn. You can Super Poly their tokens away to make First of the Dragons. Predaplant Wind Pegasus is to spin a card off of Dogmatica Punishment. Link Spider, you can make this off of your tokens. All Mirage is just in case you need to like normal summon Sangan and get its effect by using All Mirage. If you're in that situation, you've bricked pretty hard, but it's an option. Wee Witch is a good card. We're waiting for Dark Charmer to come to Master Duel. That will be a very good card I'll link to for this deck when it comes out, but for now, Wee Witch is a good card. It boosts the attack of all of your dark monsters, which all of your monsters are when Lair of Darkness is on the field. And it's also good because it recycles one monster from the graveyard. Beat Cop is also a good link too. You have to use 2 dark monsters with different names as material for it to get its effect. So you can use like a token and then another one of your monsters to make this. And then you get the effect where you contribute a monster, which it contribute itself, and then you put a patrol counter on any card. And that patrol counter negates 1 destruction of that card. And mainly you're putting your patrol counter on Lair of Darkness, so that if your opponent, like Feather Dusters or Twin Twisters, your Lair of Darkness at least survives 1 time, which you want to be protecting your Lair of Darkness, because like I said, that's the deck. If it gets popped, you probably lose. You can run Predaplant, Verte Anaconda, because you're running Super Poly, so if you have 2 effect monsters on the field, you can Super Poly, it's broken. And then Appaloosa for a Link 4 option. You're running a control deck, so she's the best Link 4 because she can negate monster effects during your opponent's turn. And that's the deck, so let's look at some replays. Alrighty, so we are going into our first replay, which is against Pengus Khan, which is the most amazing username I've ever seen in my entire life. Props to you, sir. So looking at our hand, we have a tour guide, we have a Lair, which means we're pretty much set. We've got Lair in our hand, so we can make the plays that we need to make. We've got 2 Sanctum, which is the best trap card in the game, and we have Dogmatica Punishment, which is also the best trap card in the game. So not a bad hand whatsoever. So we set our Lair, and then we go tour guide. So when you go tour guide, you have some options to consider, and you need to consider the fact that whatever you summon, its effect is going to be negated. As long as you have Lair of Darkness on the field, though, you can summon Lilith, and you want to be doing that most of the time because she's by far the best card. She's a quick effect card that tributes a monster, and with Lair of Darkness on the field, you can tribute your opponent's monster during their turn. And so even though I can't search a trap card, I already have a lot of trap cards in my hand, a lot of good trap cards. I have 2 copies of Sanctum and I have a Dogmatica Punishment. And I'm thinking, alright, I can tribute a monster during their turn. I can Dogmatica Punishment, which means I get to destroy 2 monsters if I send a Tis. And my opponent is going to be unable to use the extra deck. That's probably enough control to get past turn 1, even though I can't search another trap. So I make that play. Lilith is on the field with Tour Guide. And now it's time to pay attention to our opponent's turn. So what is our opponent playing? He plays his first card. He's playing Secret Password. Alright, so this is against Evil Twins. And we have Sanctum live. So our Evil Twins player is not going to be able to summon any of their links, which means this deck is unplayable. So let's see what happens. I chain Sanctum. And y'all know I'm going for Scythe. Like, there's no reason not to go for Scythe here. He adds his spell cards. The Evil Twin archetype has so many searches, it's ridiculous. Like, the spell cards search the spell cards, and those spell cards search the other spell cards. It's like, oh my god. So anyways, Scythe's effect activates, and when that effect activates, if they have no response to that effect, the extra deck is just not in play. You cannot link summon. You can't do anything. So what does my opponent even do? He searches, and then he's playing the Unchained monsters. I guess the Live Twins are fiends, so you'd like... I've never seen this before. Like, I was looking at Evil Twin deck profiles because I was kind of interested in them, but... I mean, this card can't do anything. I remember reading it. It special summons itself by popping a card. He goes to the battle phase, and to be honest, I'm really not sure what he's up to, like why he's going into Lilith, but I wasn't really desiring to find out, so I just tribute his monster during the battle phase. And Lilith's effect is negated, but the tribute effect is a cost, so you just paid the cost, it gets negated, doesn't matter, the monster's still gone. And then he ends his turn. Literally, he can't do anything. He cannot use the extra deck. So what do we do now? We draw back to the front, so now I'm thinking, oh man, I can like link away Scythe, and then during his turn I can just back to the front the Scythe, and he can't use his extra deck again for another turn. So that's exactly what I do. I use Lilith's effect to tribute the token, because I'm going for damage here. Like, I'm not doing anything until main phase 2, because I want these numbers. And main phase 2, then I link away, and I'm going into beat cop here. And this pretty much seals the deal, because the way you break this deck is you destroy Lair. And I'm about to give Lair a layer of protection, so as soon as this happens, you know, duel's over. And he can't even use his extra deck for another turn. I get 2 tokens, so I can link those away, or I can Verte Anaconda into First of the Dragons. There's so many things you can do. He summons his monster, I just back to the front the Scythe. And Scythe's effect activates. There it is. The extra deck is gone. He searches the spell with his spell, and then he uses another spell to search another spell. This has an effect where if you control like the Kisakil or the Lila monsters, that you get to search a monster as well. So I'm popping one of those cards so that he can't search a monster, but it doesn't really matter. This deck is just destroyed by Scythe. Anyways, I send Natis to the graveyard, which means that I get to pop another card. I just pop the other monster. He plays this continuous trap. It lets him search another thing. He's just searching things and praying that it works out for him. I have another Sanctum, so I go ahead and summon Morale Attack, which lets me pop the continuous spell he just played. And now it's time to wrap things up. We don't want him to have another turn here, so we're just moving to attack position, and I leave the Scythe in defense position just because he could be like running fucking Mirror Force, and I play Duel Links, so I just have habits. But he doesn't have a response, so the game's just over. And that really shows you the level of control that you can have over a deck, and it's and like, yeah, Evil Twins isn't meta or anything, but like, I mean, imagine this against like Sky Strikers. They can't link. Or, I mean, Drytrons can play around it because they can ritual summon. They don't get Beatrice. It's good against a lot of decks. So let's go to the next replay, which is kind of a meme replay, but it's a really good game. Okay, so this replay requires a little bit of an explanation. So when I was lower in the ladder, I was running kind of a meme version of this deck that used the Fang of Critias and 2 copies of Mirror Force, because I really wanted to summon Mirror Force Dragon and resolve its effect. And I'm showing you this replay because it actually happens and it's fantastic. So I'm going first. This is one of those situations where the lead is not very strong. I only have Sangan as a normal summonable monster, so what do I do here? Well, I just All Mirage, and I at least get the search off. So it's really not a strong start at all, and sometimes these hands happen, but that's why you run All Mirage. We get to add a Max C into our hand, and we're hoping to draw a lot of cards next turn to save our hand, basically. We don't need to play Lair because we're not tributing, so keep it safe, keep it in the hand. We were playing against dinosaurs. He terraformings to add Lost World, and it's kind of funny to me because, you know, we're both going to be running field spells that summon tokens, which kind of creates some interesting interactions in this duel. So he activates Oviraptor's effect. At this point, I'm like, yeah, it's Max C time. So we go ahead and resolve that bad boy. And he adds Baby Sarasaurus to his hand, and Lost World is special summoning a token, which lets me draw a card. And since he summoned a token to my field, I might as well just use this opportunity to get All Mirage off, and so I'm just going to give my token protection. Anyways, he crashes into my token to send Baby Sarasaurus to the graveyard. It activates to summon Miscellaneousaurus. I get to draw a card. And then he link summons, or no, he doesn't link, he Xyz summons into Baguska. Attack position. Oops. Anyways, we draw another card, and at this point our hand is much better. We still haven't drawn Lilith, which kind of sucks, but we have 2 Arema and Lair in our hand, so there's some plays we can make. We go ahead and activate our Lair. He Max C's. That's fine with me because we're not actually going to be special summoning very much this turn, if at all. And we're going ahead and normal summoning Arema. We're going to use that effect to tribute our Jurassic token. And because we tributed our own monster, Diabolus activates. So we do special summon once, get Diabolus on the field. We go battle phase, we destroy our opponent's Baguska. Crash in. Diabolus, I tribute a monster to send a card the opponent chooses, either the top or the bottom of the deck. And so our opponent has gotten -1 in card advantage. That's another reason why Diabolus is a really good card. Because we tributed, we get a token. And now we pass it over to our opponent. So what is our opponent going to do now with Diabolus on the field? Oh yeah, it's dinosaurs. So he summons Ultimate Conductor Tyranno. I'm having enough of the field spell, so I just decide to pop it even though there's only 1 card that I can pop. I'm like, yeah, no, I don't want that. So I pop it. Miscellaneousaurus activates. They're summoning shit, they're destroying shit in their hand, they're doing dinosaur shenanigans. Evolution Pill is in the hand. Oviraptor comes back, we're activating it to add Miscellaneousaurus. We're activating Miscellaneousaurus, we're playing our Evolution Pill, and oh no. Ultimate Conductor Tyranno number 2. We're popping our card to get Miscellaneousaurus out, and then he Xyz summons into Dugares. And at this point, I'm like, alright, is he gonna draw a card, or is he trying to OTK me? The answer is he's trying to OTK me. He's doubling attack of his Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, and I'm like, oh god, am I actually gonna be able to survive here? I'm not sure. Because Ultimate Conductor Tyranno can just fucking bop your goddamn cards. So what I'm thinking here is, alright, if I can survive, and then I can Mirror Force Dragon, because I have Fang of Critias in my hand. Mirror Force Dragon is not a bad matchup against Ultimate Conductor Tyranno, because it has to attack in order to pop monsters. And Mirror Force Dragon destroys the opponent's field if they declare an attack. So I use Trap Trick to search Mirror Force, and next turn, if I survive, I'm summoning Mirror Force Dragon. So he's going, he's popping my monsters, he's doing burn damage, and I'm like, dear god, here comes the 7k. I have Back to the Front. So I summon Diabolus, and he can't declare an attack twice, so thankfully I'm spared the 7,000 points of damage, and Dugares crashes in for 1,200 points, and that's it. So now I have a very good chance of winning, because using Dugare's effect to double the attack of the monster like that makes it so you have to skip your battle phase. So I essentially have 2 turns to get my field set up. So it's do or die, so here we go. Here's my 2 turns. I draw a card, it's an Ash Blossom, that's a good draw. Pot of Prosperity. We want more cards, and the fucker has an Ash Blossom in his hand. Ugh. So late into the game. Turn 5. Unbelievable. So, we Fang of Critias. We've got Mirror Force. Behold, the mighty Mirror Force Dragon. Stunning. Fortunately, we get Book of Moon, but that's okay, because we get another turn to do things, because he cannot attack into us this turn. Can't do anything, you just end phases. It's very, very lucky that he couldn't do anything. But, I draw Malice, which usually, you know, is not good, but we're turn 7. So drawing Malice in this case is actually really clutch, because Malice is such a good late game card. And we have Diabolos in the graveyard. So what you can do is you summon Malice. Her effect requires 2 tributes to get off. But with Lair of Darkness on the field, you can tribute 1 opponent's monster. So I'm going to tribute one of these Conductor Tyrannos. And I'm going to tribute one of my monsters. And the cool thing about this combo is that Diabolos, unfortunately, doesn't activate unless you tribute one of your own monsters. But with Malice's effect, you can do both with one effect. You can tribute one of your monsters and one of their monsters. He max C's, that's probably a good choice because I'm about to summon Diabolos, but I have a late game Ash Blossom, so have a little taste of your own medicine, Rainy. So we go ahead and negate the max C. Malice adds Mirror Force back to our hand, on our field, and Diabolos comes back. So now we are sitting very pretty. We are getting rid of our opponent's last card. And we have to end our turn because we can't crash over this Conductor Tyranno. But it doesn't matter because if he attacks, Mirror Force Dragon just wipes the field. And my opponent was such a good sport. He actually let me resolve the effect. And then he scoops after. But the fact that I got to resolve that effect, it was palpable. It was amazing. So anyways, I hope you enjoyed this video and these duels. Consider Lair of Darkness. It's just a really fun deck, and thanks for tuning in.